Thank you for clicking on this video. This is a little ongoing series of mine that I've had for a bit, and I hope you enjoy it. If you're confused, or if this is your first time clicking on something like this, I would start either at episode 1 or episode 5. Other than that, enjoy. Also, I was a little sick doing this narration and still kind of am, so sorry if the quality seems a little worse. Omega, episode 12, A Painful Realization. Recap. Wolf Squad, with the help of the Black Hand pirate crew, raided a prison ship. Inside, they were able to find their prisoner, Vito Barnabas, known for creating Weaver Hunter bots and Squire fighters. But that is not all, as these Black Hand pirates were here for another reason, to get new recruits. And their way to find these recruits? Make the criminals fight each other. The survivors are welcomed aboard. Any that were wounded or were trying to escape were shot down. And Ishin got to see all of this. Standing in the middle of a grand city was a palace where the fate of her people would be decided. Ishin sat next to his father, who had the family heirloom around his neck that signified who had the authority in the small, confidential red room, with only tables and chairs decorating it. Sitting on one side was the Crimson Court that dictated and pushed any new laws inside Fireweaver territory, while on the other side was the ESF. The Emperor's crimson eyes clashed with the man in front of him, wrinkles across his brow and eyelids. Anyone would know this man as Maximus, president of the ESF and war hero of the Unification Wars. "So, have you and your court finally come to a decision?" Maximus asked. The Emperor chuckled to himself. "Let's see for ourselves. Ariana, champion of fire salamanders. What is your choice?" the Emperor asked. "My house stands with you, my lord," she answered, the white pearls in her hair shining like stars. "What about you, Ota?" "Oh, like I would want those types of laws on my people. No." Yoda gave a thumbs down to the laws and demands, his belly partly consuming the table as he moved. "Enrico Mori? Oh, it's a no from me. Our blast tea shall stay a delicacy," he winked, stirring a wooden spoon in a cup of blast tea. Next to him sat his own son, who we know as Oscar, who had a large smile across his face, just happy to be there. "And last but not least, Akito?" Akito's eyes were focused on every movement of Maximus. "As I said, my Emperor, this would not only hurt our exports and economy, but our colonies would almost be entirely defenseless. So I say we decline." The Emperor smirked. "You heard my counsel, and for my response, it's a no." Maximus clenched his teeth behind his white beard. "Is that so? Remember who put you on that throne." "I took the throne from my own brother. You may have helped, but it wasn't just the ESF. Also Stone Weavers, Lightning Weavers, and the last Omega, too. You do realize that it was never a suggestion. You will implement them." "No. In good faith to my people, I cannot." "You will." Maximus slammed his fist onto the table. "If I cannot convince you with words, then how about in battle?" Both ESF representatives and Crimson Court were surprised. "You truly wish for war? It's been only 17 years since the greatest war in our galaxy, and you want another one over something so as simple as this?" Ishin, seeing the chaos, seeing the wave of the arguments pushing, he then spoke out of turn. "Wait, can't this be settled a different way? In Weaver cultures, we have something called a Tuvarat." "I'm aware. A battle between two Weavers. The winner can ask for anything." "Are you suggesting this?" Maximus asked. "I am." Ishin's father looked at him with a glare that could melt ice. "Well, then I accept. I'll face you, Prince." Maximus smiled. "I will not allow you to face my son," the Emperor yelled. "Don't worry, father. I've got this," Ishin reassured.
Then I think this meeting is adjourned. I shall meet you on the battlefield in an hour, Prince Ishin. Maximus left with his entourage, giving a little glare to Ishin as he left. The Emperor stood up, looking at his compatriots. "Excuse me, everyone. I need to go talk to my son," the Emperor said, grabbing Ishin, walking away from the Crimson Court, whose members were still in shock. Ishin was brought to his parents' room, his father standing over him in his ceremonial robes, like an imposing tower. "First off, it was not your turn to speak during that meeting. Second off, fighting a man who was once a ranger and Fame Weaver killer? What are you thinking? What were you thinking, trying to goad another war from humanity?" Ishin yelled. Ishin's mom then came from a different room. "Did something happen?" she asked, her hair flowing like a black veil. "Our son decided to challenge Maximus to a Tuvarat," his father informed. She shook her head. "Look, it was either that or another war could have started," Ishin argued. "I was not going to drag us into another war. I was calling him on his bluff." Ishin's mother got onto her knees, fixing his uniform and hair. "What's done is done. Before you say anything, you won't fight for him." His father was just about to speak before she cut him off again. "Instead, we should follow our son's decision, even if it was foolish." She braided Ishin's hair into the same comfortable style, her hands grabbing with a small bit of malice. "Thanks for understanding, Mother." "Oh, don't you get it twisted. When you're done with your little Tuvarat, no matter the outcome, we will talk. Oh, and you're going to need your medal." She grabbed his weapon that had been placed onto a table. It was crude and large. To anyone, it was unwieldy, but in Ishin's hands, it could be wielded like paper. "I won't lose. I promise both of you," Ishin reassured, igniting his sword in a red fire. "All right. Well, let's get going then." Maximus is not a very patient man. The Emperor placed a comforting hand on his son's back as they walked down the hall. Time passed as both sides prepared upon a grand arena that has both judged and decided the fates of weavers for hundreds of years. Painted inside, its dome ceiling depicted a man upon a battlefield. In one hand he held the standard of the phoenix. His other hand was raised. Hanging from it was the necklace of emperors. This man was known as Eremiah, both an Omega and the first Phoenix Emperor. The arena had seats that overlooked the floor from high above stone walls painted a maroon red. The Emperor sat in a chair meant for a judge. Anybody who was anything was watching. Ishin on one side of this arena, his large medal at his side. Maximus on the other, unsheathed a curved sword, with a spike on its back, meant for puncturing armor and metal. Ishin knew whose weapon that was. It was none other than his dead uncle, and the last ruler. Approaching the middle, both combatants bowed. Maximus had the perfect posture. You could almost mistake him for a weaver, while Ishin did the wrong bow. Instead of a bow of respect, he did one with his left hand raised. The sign of a formal conversation is over. Both took their stances, Ishin's hunk of metal in front of him like a wall, while Maximus had one hand on his hip and the other firmly gripping the weapon. Ishin struck first, Maximus dodging ever so slightly to the left, feeling the quake of Ishin's metal crack the ground. Using the momentum of the swing, Ishin spun in the air, bringing the brutish block down again, causing the whole arena to shake. As it sunk to the ground, the methodical machinations of Maximus took stage, kicking his opponent, launching a single strike with his pommel. Ishin fell to the ground, Maximus balancing himself on the colossal sword, his metal pointed at Ishin's throat. "Looks like I win," Maximus said, not even showing a smile. "Now, my wish." "Just say it," Ishin yelled. "I'm surprised on how loud you are, Prince. You would think that someone like you would be a lot more respectful. But for my wish, how about this? I don't want a war, but either way, I will get what I want. When you become the next emperor, you will listen to mine and the ESF's every whim and wish. As if, Ishin scowled. Maximus pressed his sword down onto his throat. One little nick, and he would be done. Ishin looked over to his father, who looked panicked, slowly raising his own weapon from its sheath. But Ishin didn't want his father to lose his honor and reputation by interrupting a Tuvarat. One of the worst things he could do, especially at his position. Fine. When I am in power, you have my command. Good boy. Sheathing his blade, Maximus bowed, looking toward the Emperor. Don't worry. You won't have to agree to my demands. I shall drop them for now. You may continue to enjoy your people and its culture. Maximus left without another word, a sly smile over his face as he looked down at Ishin, who was still laying on the ground, staring at Eremiah, his stoic face staring back in disappointment. Ishin was awoken, though, from his dream, Jack's face now above him, poking his shoulder. Hey, I think we landed, Jack informed. Ishin stood up, Jack moving out of the way. His mind started filling with the events of yesterday. Are you okay? Jack asked. I'm fine, Ishin replied. I mean, you did kind of just fall asleep, not saying anything after we departed last time. Did they do anything to you yesterday? Ishin started to fidget with the weave metal that Scarlet gave him. No, they didn't. Look, I'll be okay. Are you sure? Jack looked concerned. Yes, Jack, I'll be okay. But it's nice to finally have you here, actually. Well, of course. Like I would leave my best friend alone. It's not like I have anywhere else to go right now, either. Suddenly, the door opened, Scarlet standing there, a package in her hands. Oh, am I interrupting anything? She asked, placing the package onto the table. No, not at all, Ishin said, standing up. What's in the box? She smiled. Well, open it and find out. Ishin opened the box to see a new set of robes, almost exactly like his, but with more of a red tint. Scarlet moved a nearby chair, welcoming Ishin to it. We had a little pit stop, and well, I found some typical weaver robes, tailored them up a little bit, and there you go. Now, would you like your hair done again? Ishin smiled. Of course. She worked on his hair, getting every strand in perfect position. So, where are we exactly? Jack asked. A beautiful jungle planet, actually, Scarlet said, finishing up Ishin's hair. And why? Well, this ship isn't a school bus, and I need to talk to my employer in person. Jack squinted at her. So, you're going to drop us off here? Of course, but don't worry, you'll be accommodated very nicely. She finished Ishin's hair, with him having a melancholy smile. Do I finally get to meet your employer? Ishin asked, turning his head. Oh, well, he actually told me that he wanted to meet you specifically. Did he now? Jack whispered to himself. Scarlet moved to the door. Well, let's not keep him waiting. Getting everyone ready, they left the ship, being greeted by large fauna on their sides and a beautiful huge runway that led to what could only be described as a monolithic tan stone temple. Coming outside was a single man making his way to Scarlet. If it isn't the beautiful Scarlet, I'm guessing everything went all right. He used his hands a lot when talking to her. That's when Ishin noticed his left arm was made entirely out of weave metal. Inside its palm, a floating ball of weave metal, lightning arcing between it and his fingers. And where is Vito? He asked. I'm right here. The last to leave the ship was Vito. My mind started to go into overclock with ideas. On the ship, actually. I came up with this. Vito handed him schematics for a new machine that seemed to be able to use the power of Florm artifacts. Well, don't worry. We'll put your mind to good use. He tried to give Vito a pat on the shoulder, but he backed away in disgust. Please don't touch me. Scarlet's employer then surveyed the crowd in front of him. So, Scarlet, why so many kids? She looked at Ishin to give an answer. Oh, that would be my fault, Ishin spoke up. The man smiled as he adjusted his white hair. Ah, good to finally see you in person, Ishin. So, what's with all these people? Well, when we were on that prison ship, some of the prisoners were, well, people I knew and who helped me. I couldn't have just left them. Oh, I see. I understand. Well, any friend of yours is a friend of mine. He snapped his metallic fingers together, sparks sputtering out. Coming from around a corner were flying bots that had no legs, only small gravitational balls below their torso. They were also dressed up like butlers, with funny mustaches and all. If your friends wouldn't mind following the butler bots, they will take them to some rooms. It should be better accommodation than prison. Come on, let's go, Jack commanded, taking one last look at Ishin as they left. Now, will the four of you follow me? He gave a tour of the place. Their first stop was a large workshop, wires hanging from the ceiling, beautiful wood-carved shelves along the circular wall, every drawer filled with materials.
Oh, it's almost as good as my workshop on Earth. Vito walked in. I'm going to be in here now. He walked over to a desk and started to immediately build something.
Enjoy yourself, Vito. Now, Scarlet and Fen, I'm going to show Ishin the rest of our humble abode. Would you like to meet us in the main chamber? Of course, sir, Scarlet said, leaving with Fen. Now, come this way. He took Ishin to an indoor garden with exotic plants, even seeing a few from his home. So, what is your name? Ishin asked. You can call me Zechariah. Well, Zechariah, what do you do? Zechariah started to rub the metallic ball in his hand. Now, you promise not to freak out, right? Sure. I am the leader of the Neo-Weavers. Ishin was shocked. Wait, so I've been helping the Neo-Weavers? His face started to scowl. Then all those prisoners. Can I tell you something? Zechariah started to stare longingly at the plants whose leaves reflected every color known to man. I did not want that to happen. Hell, when I heard the news, I had to stop myself from going straight to Mingram and dealing with him myself. It's still your responsibility, Ishin snapped back. You're right. That's why I've, severed ties with him. The galaxy sees us Neo-Weavers as villains, and I don't need any more innocent blood spilled on my hands. He looked at Ishin. Having someone like you, though, might be able to help. Ishin eyed him. And what do you mean? Zechariah gave a coy smile. Well, someone who is willing to save an entire class of peers shows me you have compassion for your fellow Weaver. Your example could impact new Weavers for the better. Crossing his arms, Ishin replied, How do I know that's your goal? I wish I could show you, but give me time, and I will show it. Look, I'll even sweeten the deal. 2 more missions, and I'll make sure Scarlet helps you get your vengeance. And after that, well, that's up to you. You're allowed to stay and help us, or continue on your path. So, what do you say? Zechariah brought out his mechanical hand, ready to shake. Then you have a deal for now. Ishin shook his hand, feeling zaps of electricity from the metal, causing him to taste copper. Sorry about that. Also, I need to go talk to your friend Scarlet in private. But first, with the snap of his fingers, a butler bot came. Please direct Ishin to his glorious room. Following the bot, they went up a flight of stairs to a set of mahogany double doors.
Entering the room, it smelled like home, blooming trees with a hint of brimstone that emanated from an incense burner in the shape of a Himorian hawk. A large circular glass window overlooked a shipyard where Nia weavers worked on vehicles and ships. A pleasant bed was at the end of the room. It was so big it could fit 4 people. Next to it was a vanity table with a newly cleaned mirror. Finally, a suit of pristine ancient weaver armor sat in a corner. It towered over Ishin as he tried on the helmet, acting more like a bucket than a helmet for him. "Everything go okay?" a voice asked. Lifting the helmet off his head, Ishin saw Jack. "Oh, with Zechariah? Yeah. It went well. We actually even made a deal." "Oh, really?" Ishin placed the helmet back onto the stand, moving to the window. "Yeah. 2 more missions, and I've been promised my vengeance." Jack ran his hand through his hair. "And you trust them?" "Well, it's the easiest path with the resources they have. And if we run into problems, we have each other." "So, do you think that we can handle both Scarlet and the man with the metal arm?" Jack moved into the room, taking in his surroundings. "You know he's the leader of the Neo-Weavers," Ishin informed. Jack now ran both hands through his hair. "Oh, even better. So you made a deal with the leader of a terrorist group? Are you sure this is smart?" "Look, he seems reasonable enough. And we know their base of operation. So, we have info on them that we could tell the Crimson Court if it came down to it." A knock then came from the door frame. "Looks like I'm interrupting something again," Scarlet guessed. Ishin changed his posture to stand a little straighter. "No, not at all." She slinked over to him. "Well, good, because we already have a new mission." "Really? Where are we going?" he asked. "Oh, nothing much. Just the Shadow Weaver colony on this side of the galaxy." She smiled. "We're going after another shard." "Well, let's get going then," Ishin exclaimed. Just as they were about to leave the room, Jack spoke up. I'm coming too." "Are you sure? What about the other weavers?" Ishin protested. "They can handle themselves, and someone needs to watch your back." Jack ran to his side. "You know, that's my job," Scarlet said. "It's fine, Scarlet. Like I said earlier, he can help us." Ishin smiled at Jack by his side. Together, Wolf Squad boarded Scarlet's ship, leaving for their next mission. Meanwhile, on the Shadow Weaver colony, Nodlin, a girl with long jet black hair meditated on a wooden beam that overlooked a village. Below, ships landed and weavers were getting ready for the Festival of Novus Vita, a celebration of those who were born in the last 5 years. The festival ends when something known as the touching washes over the galaxy. This could be a day, even to 6 months. This force, when it touches a weaver, makes their skin glow. The girl on the wooden beam grabbed her dagger-shaped metal. Unseen to the naked eye, her weave pulled on the memories of those around her. Under her eyelids, the memories flashed like a slideshow. Her concentration was broken, though, by a well-known whistle. "Azora, please come down," a calm voice yelled. Azora stood up, backflipping off of the beam, only to teleport perfectly to the ground with a puff of purple smoke. Standing in front of her was an old woman with a hand axe strapped to her side and wearing a comfortable-fitting ornate robe. "Enjoying the view up there?" she asked. "Oh yeah, I did. There are so many new people and so many new experiences." Azora raised her hands at a celebration. "Anything interesting?" the old woman said, starting to walk, signaling Azora to follow. "Oh, all of it was awesome, Master Nix. Like, I was able to gather there was a man who was a hunter of Titan animals, and I saw a memory where he was hunting a storm bird with a lightning weaver, with a spear, I think he had too." Azora ran into a door. Her master snickered. "Are you okay?" she asked, opening the door. "Yeah, I'm fine." Azora smiled, a red mark now forming on her forehead. They entered a room meant for training. Rods of old weave metal sat in a barrel. Different obstacles also littered the arena. Some where only shadow weavers could reach with their weave. Her master smiled. "Today is your lucky day, Azora." Cocking her head, she asked, "What do you mean?" "Well, one of our Archons is here."
Interrupting her master with energetic hands, she asked, "Wait, one of our Archons from our home planet made it past the Khan blockade and everything in between it?" "Yes, an Archon from Eldon is here." "Why?" "Well, although we are so far from our homeland, we are still Shadow Weavers, and its people. So, in a way, he's here to make sure our ways haven't deviated over time. That's not all. They're also here for it." She moved to an idol that sat in the back of the room. It had the appearance of a humanoid bat-shaped creature emanating a purple glow around it. "It's gotten that bad over there?" Azora asked. Her master closed her eyes, pulling out her medal. "Apparently so. Your mission, Azora? Go get the Archon without using your weave." Azora looked back at her with puppy dog eyes. But why?" "Because I said so. Now go, and don't take too long." Azora was about to speak again until Nyx cut her off. "Don't say a word. I need to fully concentrate to displace the ward around the idol." She started to move her medal in a rhythmic pattern. Azora left, slowly closing the door. She began her mission into the festival, but was quickly infatuated by food, trying out a Shadow Weaver delicacy known as soul bread. The dough was slightly sweet, and in the middle was a salty cheese. In combination with the dough, it created a mouth-watering taste. She then realized that she needed to focus on the mission. Quickly eating the rest of the bread, she ran through the crowds. Also watching a few games being played, like Are You Stronger Than a Rock Weaver, where you could put all your strength into one blow to make a small puck hit the top, where a doll that could be described as a stone weaver with googly eyes sat. Azora kept on searching, now getting frustrated, wondering how she would be able to discover the Archon without her weave. Seeing all these different people was almost impossible. Then she saw it, an ancient man with a bat-like nose and ears, talking to a crowd. At the time, he was creating scenes from his adventure out of purple smoke. One was that of a Khan ship, another was a hawk. Then she felt something, a rage burning so hot that it threatened to scorch her mind. She looked back at the Archon, still engaged with the crowd, purple mist explosion, the crowd laughing with him. Instead of going and talking to her, she went to go investigate this feeling. Getting off a black hawk-like ship was Ishin, Jack, and Scarlet. "Are you sure we're not going to need Fen for this?" Ishin asked. "Oh, not at all. This is by far the easiest one. Hell, just the two of us could have probably gotten it." "So, where do we go?" Ishin asked while looking around the festival. "I'll be going to talk to that thing over there." Scarlet pointed to the Archon. "The two of you, on the other hand, need to find this." Scarlet handed them an image. Where Azora was watching, she couldn't really see it. Scarlet took her leave as Ishin and Jack walked into the festival. Azora followed behind them. The sun began to hide behind a mountain range. Multicolored lamps were lit to keep the dark at bay. Walking between people in many stalls, Ishin spoke. "They already set up for the festival?" "Yeah, I mean, back home we're doing the same thing," Jack responded. "It's been a while since I've been back home." "It truly has been for, well, both of us, being so far away. Makes you miss the little things, like remembering the hover trucks that would carry brimstone into town for the annual lighting of the Phoenix." "How could I not? Before anyone could smell it, my allergies would go crazy." Ishin shivered, remembering how he couldn't even breathe out of his nose for an entire week after every Phoenix lighting. "Oh, and then your mom would make that amazing salamander soup. That was the best." "Yeah, it really was." Jack turned around to see Ishin saddened. "Hey, look over here. I see something interesting." Jack led Ishin to Are You Stronger Than a Stone Weaver, where they stood in line, two others in front of them. "You know, we've been given a mission, Jack. We shouldn't disappoint her." Ishin started to walk away. "Come on, just one game?" Jack said, getting out of line, following Ishin. Azora's curiosity started to bubble over more. "You know, if I read his mind, I technically didn't fail in finding the Archon," she persuaded herself. Then she waited as Jack and Ishin started a small argument. "You should have stayed if you were going to act like a child," Ishin complained. "I'm like a child, Ishin?" Jack got closer. "I'm not the one who decided to work with a bunch of terrorists." "Then why are you here?"
Jack bowed his head with no response. Ishin started to walk once more. Then from the crowd, Azora grabbed her dagger, touching the tip of it to the middle of her forehead. Focusing on Ishin, she tried to break into his mind, but was met with an impenetrable rage, burning any connection she made into his mind. Azora was not deterred, though. Now focusing on Jack, easily she made her way into his head. Memories of an adventure moved through her eyes like speeding cars, using breathing techniques her master taught her. Azora made the images slow to get a better understanding of what she was looking at. One of them was a photo that Scarlet showed him. The photo was that of the idol that her master had always kept an eye on. "Oh, that's not good." She placed a hand on her chin. "I could try something, but I've never tried something like this. Let's do it." Using her metal like a wand, focusing on Jack's mind, beads of sweat formed on her brow as she struggled to plant even a single notion into his head. With one final push, using all her energy, she did it. Jack entered a trance-like state, compelled to head towards the dojo. Walking towards it, Azora walked by his side, making sure the trance was unbroken. Ishin walked a bit further. "Look, let's just get this done, and then we can go back home. I'll make sure it's during Novus Vita. How does that sound?" Ishin turned around to see Jack gone. Scanning the area, he sees him turn a corner around a building. Confused, he followed. Turning the same corner, he sees Jack open the door, Azora right next to him. Her weapon was drawn, focused on Jack, just like her mind. Ishin watched as a cloud of purple smoke circled Jack's head. The door closed, leaving Ishin in the streets. Running up to the door, he cupped his ear around it, trying to hear something. But there wasn't even a peep. He placed one hand onto a dagger. With a deep breath, he slowly opened the door, sneaking in and walking as slow as possible, keeping low to the ground and wall. Ishin moved to a barrel with rods of weave metal, used for sparring. Peeking between the rods like reeds, he watched as Azora spoke to her master, still in concentration, the ward almost broken. Ishin also saw the idol. "Hey, I found something you might want to see," Azora spoke, breaking her master's concentration. "What is it?" She turned around to see Jack and a sweaty Azora. "Who is this?" "His name's Jack, and him and his friend are here to steal the idol," she said. "Is that so? What did I say about looking into people's mind?" "Look, I wouldn't, but I felt this anger and hate from his friend. Like, I can even feel it in here. And I got curious, and, well, I did this." "You don't say." Her master side-eyed Ishin's hiding spot. Jack started to shake his head as the trance had finally broke. "Where am I?" he panicked, looking around at his captors. Nyx spoke up. "Just stand still for me." She placed her palm on her still-sheathed weapon. Jack started to back up, getting ready to run. Just as he turned his heel, an invisible ward surrounded him, knocking him to the ground. Ishin, seeing his chance, then sprung from his hiding spot, launching inflamed fire at Nyx, who stepped just an inch to her left as the flames hit the wall, missing her. "Azora, would you please grab the guards?" Nyx smiled at her. "What about him?" Azora pointed towards Ishin. "Don't worry, I'm in no harm." Okay." Azora ran through the door. Charring coals of fire were sent her way, but Nyx used a shelter of shade to protect her student. "That is unbecoming of a prince, to attack when someone's back is turned," she said. "That's funny, coming from a Shadow Weaver," Ishin countered. "Touché." Ishin readied himself with both daggers in front of him, his right guarding his chest, while his left was ready to strike. Nyx blinked in black, closing the gap, her weapon drawn, just a regular parry. She launched his left dagger out of his hand. The dagger itself stuck into the wooden wall. Jutting out his last dagger, she grabbed his wrist. Ishin felt a cold sensation in his hand, and then it went slack, the clink of his dagger hitting the ground. Nyx smiled. "Now, let's see what's going on in that head of yours." She pressed her thumb up to his forehead. Her other hand held her weapon to his arm. "A single jerk or twitch, Ishin, and I will sever the tendons in that arm." He responded with a growl. Ishin wanted to move, to rip her apart, but his brain wouldn't let him, out of self-preservation. "Now then, Ishin, sleep." The same cold sensation in his wrist entered his head, and his eyes felt heavy. His muscles relaxed. Ishin fell into the arms of Nyx. Opening his eyes, he was in a dark, snowy field, a snowstorm obscuring his view. Then Ishin saw it, just barely able to make out a figure, getting closer and closer. He realized who it was. An unconfident Abraham stood in front of him, a weak rod of metal in his hands. A rage started to now build inside Ishin. Ishin now only saw the boy that represented a future of weavers lost to humanity in the ESF. Unable to control himself, he ran Abraham through with his daggers. He watched as the ground broke open behind the now falling Abraham, consuming him. But the last glimpse Ishin saw was Abraham's face shifting into Ishin's, fear streaking across it. Ishin's hands were shaking, blood dripping from them. "You're no killer, Ishin," a calm voice said. Turning around, he saw Nyx standing there in a long white coat. "You don't know me or anything," he yelled, his voice echoing in the dark. "You're right. I don't know you. But do you even know yourself? Let's continue." With a snap of her fingers, the area changed to now a warehouse. Ishin's greatest failure. He stood in front of a kneeling Oscar, his weapon already drawn. Once again, his rage bubbled over, Ishin taking his knife to Oscar's throat. Oscar's face now shifted to Jack, then back to Oscar. "You wouldn't hurt a friend now, would you?" the figure cried. Ishin tried to push his dagger into its throat, but no matter how much force he put into it, it would not budge. Rising from the ground was Nyx. "You can't do it," she confirmed. "I can!" he screamed. "If you truly believed you could, why do you feel so sick for those poor prisoners?" Her form started to grow, towering over him like a dead tree. "Why is that, Ishin?" "Because they didn't deserve it." "And those two do?" Ishin watched as Abraham and Oscar now appeared in front of him, the figure that was sitting gone. "Yes, one of them's a murderer and the other will lead us to doom." Ishin's voice quaked. "Funny you would say such a thing, as you run with a being of doom and death. You don't know her." Nyx smiled a toothy grin, her mouth holding more teeth than possible. "And yet, you know exactly who I was talking about. How about one more Before Nyx could continue, she was cut off, her monstrous form now disappearing, the fake world around him disappearing all along with her. Falling into a black void, a comforting darkness cushioned his fall. It was quiet and peaceful to Ishin's running mind. He took a breath. For as long as he could remember, his mind was never this calm. Not even a thought. Peaceful apathy taking him for just a moment. A howl then came. First it was quiet, almost unnoticeable. Every few seconds it got louder and louder until it was right next to him, opening his eyes, a black dog. Every few seconds it got louder and louder until it was right next to him, opening his eyes, a black dog in a cage of thorns was looking at him, its red, beady eyes staring into Ishin's soul. Ishin could feel its anger and hate for them out there and those who have wronged it. Before Ishin could approach the black dog, consciousness came back to Ishin, returning him to the real world. He laid on the ground, the sound of fighting next to him. He saw Scarlet battling Nyx. A battle of blood and shadow raged on. Teleportation telepathy carried Nyx to advantageous angles. Scarlet bit back with every attack, though. "Must be a challenge since you can't read a Bloodweaver's mind," Scarlet prodded. "Nothing I can't handle," Nyx bragged, dubiously dodging Droggerts of blood. Scarlet summoned a sangling slim limb, lifting lazy weaver rods with spearing speed. Narrowly, Nyx slinked safely away, metal rods now impaled into the walls. "Nice. You got close to touching me," Nyx goaded. Blood and shadow continued on. Ishin fully gained his senses back, the inferno of rage burning inside of him, stronger than before. "Are you okay, Ishin?" Jack asked, still stuck in a ward. "Better than fine," he said, smiling sinisterly, picking up his dagger and ripping the other one out of the wall. Fire fumigated off of him. Every step a blaze followed in his footsteps. The dojo started to burn. A red rush then attacked Nyx as she blocked the attack. "You finally woke up," she said to him. Ishin flung furious attacks at her, but to no avail. She just bat each one away with ease. "You're not going to kill me or hit me," she said. "I'm not the one you have to worry about here," Ishin laughed. Out of nowhere, Nyx felt metal carve into her sword arm. Looking at the ground was her arm, and her weapon still held in its palm. Followed by another strike to her back, and another. Scarlet's serrated whip finding more and more wounds with each hit. Nyx felt weak, falling to one knee. She looked at Ishin. But falling into Ishin's view from behind Nyx was Scarlet, her red hair blowing from her face from labored breaths. "Do it! Kill her!" Scarlet commanded. "Ishin, don't do that!" Jack pleaded. "Quiet, useless!" Scarlet yelled, a deranged look on her face. "Whatever she showed you or said, Ishin, isn't true. You are better than her and Jack." Pressing a dagger to Nyx's throat, Ishin tried to push, but he couldn't as his arm was paralyzed. "Let go of my mind, witch!" he screamed at her. "I'm not in control. This is all you, Ishin," Nyx told him, grabbing his resting arm. "Like I said, you're no killer. Don't change, Ishin." Before she could move her lips again, Scarlet's blade decapitated her deceiving head. Blood squirting onto the shocked Ishin's face as he watched as her head rolled to his feet. Jack couldn't watch, feeling nauseous and throwing up in the now disappearing ward. At the same time, the ward around the idol disappeared, with Scarlet quickly grabbing it and smashing it to the ground. Inside the rubble was another Phalorum artifact. Using tongs, Scarlet picked it up and put it into a secure container, shutting it with a clink. "Well, let's get going now, boys." Her demeanor was back to what it usually is. Ishin shook out of his trance. "Yeah, her student is bringing more guards. We need to get out of here fast," he informed. "Well, good thing I brought the ship closer." Running outside, Jack was far behind them, shaking. "Hurry, you fool!" Scarlet yelled as her ship landed on top of the festival, weavers running in different directions. Jack made it to the ship, his heart beating out of his chest, and the events still playing in his head. As the ship escaped, Azora came with a battalion of guards, just to watch as the ship left. She looked over to the burning dojo, running inside. What she would find would define her life. But this is not her story. Instead, it is one of hate, and many people will be hurt in Ishin's wake. The trip back to the Neo-Weavers HQ was quiet, from Scarlet plotting to Jack's catatonic state, and Ishin looking at himself in the mirror after washing away the witch's blood. "I know who I am," he reassured himself. They landed, with Ishin retiring to his room, still trying to piece everything together. Ishin whispered to himself that he knows the right path, and he knows himself. His door opened to see a meager Jack. "Are you okay?" Ishin asked. "Yeah, I'll be fine," he assured, looking at the floor. I have something to tell you, though." "What is it?" "Just please don't be angry, but me and the rest of the class has, decided to leave." "What? Why?" I can't do this, Ishin. I can't take it. I see how they're corrupting you, and I want to help you. But you don't want my help or my input, do you?" he cried, running his hands through his hair. Ishin shook his head. "Of course you would think that. Do you know what these people have given me? First of all, they freed me from a prison where I would have died, and have given me a second chance as what I have craved for years," Ishin proclaimed. "What, vengeance on a former friend? How do I even know that it was him anymore? And not these monsters you have surrounded yourself. It could have been easily one of them. You will cause more pain on this path than you realize." Ishin's eyes turned a hateful red. Pain? You don't know the first thing about pain. You don't even know the responsibilities as a prince. You don't know the stress of that. You don't wake up either every day missing how your mother used to do your hair in the morning while you ate your food that she put her love into, or knowing you can no longer have the advice of a father who had been through so much. That you still have. You're right. I don't know that. But I know when I can't help. And I know when I have to look out for myself. So I'm leaving with the others. Ishin started to laugh. Like you can leave with all the info you know? You're now stuck here with me. Jack looked at the ground while continuing. I'm not actually. I asked Zechariah and he said we're free to leave. You're joking, right? He's not joking, Scarlet confirmed, walking in holding a box. Your ship is ready, Jack. With a nod, Jack left, looking back at his friend, who was no longer recognizable to him. Don't go, Ishin whispered to himself, but it fell upon deaf ears. I have something that might cheer you up. Scarlet looked concerned. She opened the box. Inside were Ishin's actual daggers. You found them? He said with tears in his eyes. We had to pull a few strings. They were actually in the possession of a ESF collector. But, yeah, here they are. Picking them up, the grooves matched his fingers perfectly. Then he noticed something else at the bottom of the box. A Neoweaver ring, its insignia carved into a ruby. And then there's that. I would like to make you an honorary member of Wolf Squad. What do you say? Ishin picked up the ring, looking at it, and then looking at the empty doorway. I accept. Tears started to run down Ishin's cheeks. Don't worry. One more mission, and I promise you that we will make sure you can live without grief. For now, Ishin, please rest. She directed him towards his bed, where she placed the covers over him, then drying his tears with her sleeve. In the morning, I'll do your hair, I promise. She left without another word. Ishin looked out from his window, grabbing his amulet from under his pillow, holding it close, watching as the ship carrying Jack jumps away to another planet. Ishin cried quietly from anger and confusion until he finally felt exhausted, not even realizing he had fallen asleep. His journey, though, has just started, and his choices are closed, as his path is now in front of him. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. Sorry if the quality was a little bad still for, well, being sick, but really hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any criticisms or comments, leave them down below.
Opening the box. Well, this school bribed as a monolithic sandstone.
What? Fuck, this is so... What? What?